All right, welcome everyone. This is December of the year 2020, and this is our ArcGIS Parcel Fabric Workshop. We have been very lucky in that two things. First, Santa stopped by, right? So he's here to go and wish us all a Merry Christmas. And then in addition, he dropped off ArcGIS Pro 2.7 last night. So what we're going to do today is sort of explore that. We'll open it up and see what's happened and what the changes are. So Santa, why don't you go ahead and wish everybody Merry Christmas just to start?
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. That's great. All right. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at ArcGIS 2.7. And Chris is here, but he's got to take care of something else. So if you put something, oh, here he is. He is here. So if you have any questions or anything you want to see about this, about 2.7, or any questions you might have, please put it in a chat window. Chris will convey that to me. I'm going to try to watch the chat window also. I also have a list of things I'm going to go over, and I'm going to try not to miss any of them. But this really is more of an exploratory thing. There are some things that work, and I was testing them in early adopter during the alpha and the beta tests. Some of them work, some of them aren't quite, they don't work the way we think they work. And I want to go over all of them. So please, if you have any questions or any suggestions on things that you want to go over and review, please just put them in the chat window, and we'll see if we can make sure that we take care of it. All right. So to start, when we start 2.7, there is a new interface to start, and I like where they're going with this, in that they provide us with some. They still have the recent projects. I still kind of wish that there was a way to control how many things will pop up here. And if you only work with a couple projects, that seems fine. But some of us, I mean, we work with dozens of projects, different clients and such all the time. And we find that that list just becomes cumbersome. By the way, just to let you know, if you go into this list, there's actually a pin. And if you pin it, it actually goes to the top of the list. So you can actually, if you have one favorite that you always want to appear up on the top, you can just pin it and it will always appear there. Otherwise, any other projects that you open, just open up underneath it, and it's just an accumulating list in there. But there's some new elements here. These are basically the same, but they've made some changes in it. The biggest thing is over on the right-hand side here is the resources. You know, they have an opportunity to go and open up, for example, what's new immediately, so you can go and see what changes there are in 2.7, and they have both a video compilation and they have it all listed in here, things that are new. Quick start, learning ArcGIS, GeoNet, the blogs that help, getting started with, you know, if you're coming from ArcMap, they really have done a good job on this and tried to make it easier, a little bit more comprehensive. I like what they've done here. Discovery paths, learning the basics, those sorts of things. Those are really nice. But let's open it up and let's sort of look through this and see what's going on. Today we're primarily going to talk about the parcel fabric, but there's other elements in here that we want to talk about also. Remember that in 2.6, they introduced this concept of being able to have a, where is it here? No, down here. Editing button, where when you turn this on under the edit tab, you get this edit. That's start editing and stop editing. All right, start editing, stop editing. And if you look, when this not editing, none of your edit functions work. So if you are used to ArcMap and immediately being able to go and start editing, that's disconcerting. I find myself where I do a lot of editing, so I just don't do that. I'm automatically editing every time I open up ArcMap. So let's move on then. Let's talk about it. The first thing you'll find is that under the Parcels tab, they've broken this into two different things. They've broken it into record-driven workflows. When you're on a record-driven workflow, now remember, a record-driven workflow is where it is going to create historic elements for you. It's going to track everything that you do, and this is the sort of the standard interface for it, what you want to do. But then there's also quality-driven workflow. Quality-driven workflow is not going to track what you do unless you specifically turn a record on. And it's for cleanup more than anything else. And you'll note here, there is validation here. There's both topology validation, and we'll talk later, there's some newer things in validation in here. And there's sort of, while you're editing things, you can merge points and simplify, delete parcels and such, and it's much easier to work with now, especially if you are doing a lot of quality-driven elements in here. First thing is, one of the things that I really like is, previously, if you were working on a parcel and you wanted to find everything associated with that parcel, the polygon, the lines, the points, you would have to go and find a record and then say, find all the features associated with this record and go on from there. Well, now I can do a select on this parcel, all right? And if I look, I now have that one parcel on here, but right next to the select is the parcel features. So when I click that, it automatically will go through and figure out the points that are associated with that parcel, the lines that are associated with that parcel, and the polygon. So it automatically will go and select everything associated with that parcel that I have selected. It's a nice feature. It's something that, as you're working through, and you work on this all the time, you find that you have to select not just the polygon, but the lines and the points if you're doing moves and if you're doing adjustments, those sorts of things. This is a nice feature that they put in here. I should mention that there is no schema changes for 2.7 that I have found. I've not found any of them. There are additions and add-ins and stuff, but no schema changes within the structure of 2.7. But to take full advantage of some of the elements that are in here, you do have to go and upgrade your Parcel Fabric, which is not too bad if you're in a file geodatabase. It's a little bit more cumbersome if you're in an enterprise setup where you have services. So let's start with, how do you go and upgrade a file geodatabase to take advantage of 2.7 functionality? Now, I should tell you that for most of the functionality, you don't have to upgrade the structure. You can still work with a 2.6 file geodatabase in 2.7, but there are certain things that you might want to go and upgrade it so it can take advantage of it. And I'll try to identify them as we go through here. So to upgrade a 2.6 or any other earlier version of a Parcel Fabric into 2.7, you want to run 3 specific geoprocessing tools, 3 tools. The first one you want to run is disable parcel topology. All right, that will turn off the topology so that it can go and and make it changes and edits in case there's anything that has to be modified in here. Once you've run that, and again, once you click that and run that, it'll ask you for your parcel fabric. And you tell it, here's the parcel fabric that you want to go and upgrade. Click, or excuse me, you want to disable that, you can go and disable it. Once you do that, the next thing you want to do is upgrade data set. All right, now upgrade data set. Once you do this, it will go through and check and add any additional resources to your parcel fabric that we're missing. It will also identify it then as a 2.7 version of a parcel fabric. All right. Once you're done upgrading it, you then can enable parcel topology again. All right, in which you tell it, boom, there it is, you can enable it. 3 steps, that's all you need. And the reality is, if you're an enterprise, it's you do the same thing. You wind up stopping your service, going into catalog in ArcGIS Pro, accessing your data store, running through those 3 steps, upgrading the process, and then starting your service again. The problem is that both with 2.6 and 2.7, there's additional elements in here that your service, you may have to go and republish those services to go and get those services actually recognized. It is a little bit tougher with enterprise, but it's there. So just sort of to go through in my catalog, go into databases, I can see my parcel fabric here. And if I go to properties, it will tell me, if I go to fabric, that in fact this is a version number 4, the 4th version of the parcel fabric that's out there, and the minimum required ArcGIS Pro release is 2.7. Right? And that's important. They want to make sure that that's the minimum that you can use against that parcel fabric. If I were to try to open this parcel fabric with 2.6, it would give me an error telling me that it's not the, it's the desktop software is not compatible with this structure. However, I can still take a 2.6 parcel fabric and open it with 2.7 and work on it. It is backward compatible, but it's not forward compatible. All right, so we've gone over select features. I really like this, and I've found myself using that quite a bit recently. All right, so let's talk about some of the tools in here. So if we look here, this is the first one. In the ArcMap parcel fabric, we used to have a tool called mean points. And that did not mean that they were nasty and weren't nice to you. No, it meant that it would go and take points that you had found, and it would average the locations out, find a mean, and put all your points to that location. Now, what Esri has done is it has gone and developed the same sort of functionality, but enhanced it. So on mean points here, if I'm working against a parcel fabric, I can go and draw a box and select a series of points in here. Now, if you'll note, one of the things that it did is it drew this blue line in here saying, okay, here's your selected features that have it, and it has all the lines on here. But what it does then is it goes through the points and figures out, A, do I have a control point in here? If I have a control point, the odds are I want everything to move to that control point, which is what it's highlighted in this case. It's my control point. It is a fixed shape, and here it is here, and it then draws in the blue lines what change is going to occur here. So it's going to go and take those other points that appear on those lines and literally move them over to the point, delete them, and reassign the ends of those lines to the point that you have gone and told it to merge into. So if I go ahead and hit merge on here, it goes and moves them over. By the way, I had show preview on here, so it would show me what it was going to do. And if I take care of clean on here, or clear, so I don't have anything selected in here, you will see that in fact everything has been moved to that point, and it's gotten rid of the extra points in here, which is nice. It's a really nice thing. However, the one thing we want to be aware of is normally, and you'll note there was a point over here somewhere, when it did that merge, it did not recalculate my COGO on here. And just to show you, if I undo this, all right, I actually have a point here, and I have other points in here. And when I redo this, none of these COGO values are updated. They all stay the same. So just be aware it's not necessarily recalculating the COGO on this, but it is moving the points over there and redefining the location of the endpoints. So let me see, I have another area here that I wanted to show you. So how do we use that? Well, in this case, we have points in here, and we can actually use this tool to go and merge these points together. All right. And it's giving me a warning saying there's a point that's going to be deleted on here. And as I do this, this is the point it thinks it's going to want, meaning it's just going to go and straighten out this line. But if I click on one of these other points, it will show me with the preview where this other line is going to wind up moving to. Same thing here. So it gives you the option of going through here and figuring out which of these points you wish to merge everything into, and then shows you what's going to be the result of that when you go and do this. This is actually a very, very nice tool in here. I can tell you I was testing this one quite a bit while we were working and doing the testing on here. It works nice. I found that when I would go and do it a whole lot, trying to go and pull off excessive points on certain things, I would sometimes have an issue with the polygon being moved slightly. That was on an earlier beta test. Most of that I think has been corrected now. So let's go and show you how you might use that here. For example, this is one of those things where, okay, well, we've got an issue here. I could actually use this to go and say, merge these 2 points together, and it will show me what this is going to look like as it merges these points together. All right, in this case, there's the point there. It shows me what the 2 areas are going to be like. Again, it does not modify any of the COGO values on here, but you can see it actually goes and corrects that. Here's something that's still an issue here. It moved the end of the line, but it doesn't necessarily make it consistent. So just be aware, don't think it's going to solve everything. You may still be better off going and running and redoing, sort of the removing densified curves with this. It may still be worthwhile for you to do that. By the way, just to show you how to actually go and do that, here's a curve that I want to go and remove excessive points on here. Let me make sure I turn on all of my layers. So I have my historic layers in here also, in case there's anything historic here. The way to remove densified curves with a quality-driven workflow is be on the Quality tab, turn off my topology. So it's going to not use topology to figure out where the vertices are going to be. And then go to Align Features, go in and use a tolerance here, and just go and take and put a endpoint curve on there. Go ahead and realign this. Then I'm going to go and select. I'm going to unselect all polygons in here so that the only thing I have selected are the lines and the points on that curve. If I look over here, I've got points, lines, lines, lines on here. I'm going to delete them. So I'm going to right click and delete them all. And if I note, I actually have some additional things. I see where I've got something here. Something here. Let's go and take this off, take this off. That line extends out there. I'm going to delete that line. And I'm going to do the same thing here. That line extends here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these points in here. And then I'm going to rebuild the extent. I didn't delete that one, but I did delete these here. I'm going to save this. So cleanup of densified curves inside of this with the way they've got this set up is much nicer. It's a much more efficient way of doing things on here. All right, densified curves and using quality-driven workflows. The next thing I wanted to talk about is there's this other function that is new. And I wish I were more happy about this, but I'm not. Let's go and find here. And let's select some lines here. And only select these here. So I have text lines in here. And this next tool is called Simplify by Straight. This is Manage Boundaries. This is merging collinear parcel boundaries. This used to be called Merge Courses. All right. And I have to tell it what layer this is on, tell it what my offset tolerance is, and that offset tolerance basically is the maximum that this can go and bend. And then I can say, go ahead and do this. What this does is it goes and attempts to straighten out the lines on here. And let's go, and once this is done, set this thing selected now, and just delete these points on here. Let's clear this and rebuild this extent just to make sure. And in fact, these lines did not get eliminated. So I'm not as excited about this yet. I don't think this is quite where we need to be. It's getting closer, but it's not quite where we need to be on here. Again, the merge points, definitely. I really like this a lot. And again, this will go and allow me to straighten things out and merge these points as I go. And so it will eliminate points in here. And it takes that line and moves it over to that one merged point and goes from there. All right, and Kogo is not calculated. The next thing that I have on my list is that there are some new validate attribute rules associated with the parcel fabric. And these rules, some of them are system rules that are in there by default. Others are rules that in fact you need to go and play around with. So let's look at tax parcels. Go to Design, Attribute Rules. Again, remember there's 3 types of attribute rules. The first type of rule is a calculation rule, which gets triggered. In this case, it gets triggered every time a new thing is created or it's updated as far as the shape. In this case, we have calculate the acreage into the calculated acreage field and then set the calc area units to acres is what we have it set to. Those have been there, and that's one of the really useful things inside the fabric. The other one is a constraint. The second type of attribute rule is a constraint attribute rule. This attribute rule goes and prevents you from doing things and gives you an error message if it doesn't comply with this. Right? The third type of rule, the new type of rule, is called a validation rule. That type of a rule goes and tests it against the rule and then doesn't prevent you from doing it, but rather goes and allows you to do it. And then, like a topology error, it allows you to go and create and fix that as you're going through. By default, 2.7, once you go and upgrade it to 2.7, it always creates this validation rule that this feature, all features in here must have a record. So it has these parcel features must be associated with a record that created them. All right, this is the standard one, this is default, but there's also a series of new ones that are located in the program file, ArcGIS Pro, resources, attribute rules, Parcel Fabric, English. And they are, for example, if I look at parcel polygons, these are, again, new rules that are optional. Things like must have a record, that one is automatically always in there. But things like it must be larger than a certain setting. And then you have a setting here which tells how big it has to be. So you could set it up so that in this case, a tax parcel must be at least 100 square feet or something like that, or that the parcel must be smaller than 4,000 acres. So you can set sort of these validation constraints on here. It can't overlap something else, or it must be unique, or the name must not be empty. These are all sorts of validation rules that you can go and start using inside the parcel fabric to go and make sure that the data that's being created complies with your rules. And these are optional, but you can see this is where Esri's going, in that they're trying to go and make the entire parcel fabric more rule-based so that you can customize it for you and you can set it up the way you work on here. So that things like the areas match within a certain area. So if you've got a shape area and a stated area, they have to be close, and you can tell it how far that needs to be. All right. This is a CSV file that you get once you go and install 2.7. And you have a series of them, one for connection lines, one for parcel lines, one for parcel polygons, one for points, and one for records. Notice these say parcel lines and polygon lines. It turns out that if you wish to go and apply them against other types of polygons and line features, you have to go and change that CSV so that it goes and complies with it, or else you get an error when you load it up. These are optional, but I think we're going to find a lot of us exploring how we can start making our data better by setting some rules and saying it has to be this. So you set up the rules, and then the question is, what do you do? Well, it turns out that the validation rules, for the first time with 2.7, you can actually go and validate rules if it's in a file geodatabase. Previously, it always had to be in a service-oriented branch versioning with a service. But with 2.7, you can also do this inside of a file geodatabase. But it's not automatically turned on. So to turn on the validate features, what you have to do is you have to go to any of the feature classes, right click on them and say add the error layers. All right, once you add the error layers in here, and these error layers will tell you whether you have point errors or line errors or polygon errors or object errors on here. That is a trigger that tells it then when you go to validate that if you have these error layers in here, you can also validate attribute rules. So let's go in here, go to our error inspector. And in the error inspector, we can tell it to go and not validate the topology rules, but validate the error rules that are in here. And it's the same thing. We can tell it to go and validate. I guess I don't have any of them turned on. I can, let's make sure I still don't have that on there. Okay. Records, go to quality driven, validate the topology in here. And I can validate the specific in here, and I don't see any errors in here. They all must have records on here. But again, it's at this point that you go and do this, and it works exactly the same. You get errors, you get details, you fixes, those sorts of things. This is not validating topology. This is validating the attribute rules associated with them. This, I think, is something that's going to become very, very important with the parcel fabric as we move forward on there. All right, must have a record. There's, for example, if we go over here and look at our points, there's actually already a, come on, here's a validation rule. It's a calculation rule as far as reserving the points so that if in fact a parcel is marked as fixed, if it's a control point, it's not going to delete control points. It will not even move them. So just another sample of that. All right. Let's look at another thing here. If I go in here and just select a line, all right, just select a line. And if I go to edit vertices, here's some very interesting things about this. I can now go, if I'm edit vertices, and I can right click on here and I can say reverse direction. In ArcMap, this used to be called flipping the line, in which you would reverse the direction on here. All right. And now if you'll notice, the first time I did this, the red vertex was at this end. I just flipped it, which means it went and flipped it over to the other end. So this is how you actually go and flip a line and have it automatically recalculate the bearing in the other direction for you. Not as necessary anymore as it used to be, but again, if you want to make sure that everything goes in the same direction, you can go ahead and do that. That's under Edit Vertices. Another thing that you can do is if I move my cursor on top of the line and right click, I can change the segment. One of the things we've discovered is that in ArcGIS Pro, a line is a line and a curve is a curve. Whereas in ArcMap, in the Parcel Fabric, we used to be able to take a line and change it into a curve and take a curve and change it back into a line. Can't do that in ArcMap. Or excuse me, can't do that in ArcGIS Pro. But in 2.7, it does in fact allow you to go and change straight lines into curved lines. So I can go and change this into a curved line, and I can go and it will allow me to go and modify the radius on here and all sorts of other things on here. So I can go in and change that back and forth. I can change a straight line to a curve line to a straight line. Little thing, but you may need to do that sometime. All right. Another really nice element here, and I wish it worked a little bit better, is that under geoprocessing, there is a function called generate parcel fabric links. What this does is it goes, and this is comparable to the old feature adjustment, where it would take all those adjustment vectors that you had and apply them to another feature class. This does exactly the same thing, but it does it dynamically so that, let's go over here to this layer here. I actually have a feature here that if I go in here and I generate this, it will let me go and figure out linkages between the parcel fabric links and the vertices on these features that are in this other layer. It'll tell me what the output anchor feature class is, and we'll actually create an anchor for it. It will tell me what the output links feature class is that it's going to create, where the anchor points are going to go, what the minimum length is, where do I want to go and explore them, and then there's also dates. So we'll say, okay, you created at this date, and it will allow you to go and it keeps track, and it will allow you to go and apply adjustments in the future. So you can have a zoning layer and say, all right, generate the links between the vertices in my parcel fabric, the points in my parcel fabric, and the vertices in my zoning layer. Generate these, and then I'll use another tool to go and rubber sheet them so that I can adjust this zoning layer so that it is in compliance with my parcel layer. Good stuff, right? Unfortunately, when I say here, it gives me an error warning and says the target database is not set to branch versioning. It only works right now against a branch versioned parcel fabric, which means one that's in an enterprise and served out as web services. I can share with you that on GeoNet, we have an idea that says, hey, let's let generate parcel links to your processing tool work not just with the branched fabric, but also with files geodatabases. Please vote this one up. This is a good one. I think this is a really good function that I think people will want to go and use. So I'm lobbying you now. Go and see if we can do that. If you already have a branch version parcel fabric, this is a nice tool. You can use it. Once you're done generating the links, then what you do is use the rubber sheet features tool, which goes and will rubber sheet the features according to the links in here. Here's the link features. Here's what it's going to go and move them on. So it's a two-step process. First, you generate the links, and then you go and rubber sheet it so that those features move. This is a nice feature. You can see it. This is going to be nice for us to be able to go and take feature classes and other data that is not in the fabric and keep it in agreement with as we're adjusting all of our parcels on here. Right now, this is not a branch versioned files geodatabase, so this doesn't work, but I did want to go and at least show you that's in there now, but it doesn't work with files geodatabases yet. All right. I already showed you that I can go and select, get off of here. I can go and say select all my parcel features. This again, one of my favorite ones on here to do that. So there is, let me see if I can go to another bookmark here. There are some new enhancements in Align Features. Make it in here. So within Align Features, I can go, and this is record driven now. I can go to Align Parcels, and let's go and see if we can. No, I'm still not in there. I just drew this real fast. So on here, I can go in and tell it to go and automatically generate the links within here and let it try and do that. I still want to make sure I have an anchor point, and it will go and generate some of them. I wish it was a little bit more intuitive. It's supposed to go and generate these. Doesn't always do it. Doesn't still, there's work that has to be done on the alignment tool. One of the things that they like demonstrating, and they had a data set that would do this, is I have two sets of curves here. They are not the same radius. And when I go and align them, they should go and align up, but they don't. I would still have to go and do an align features on here. Let's just make that 5 feet. And it's not going to completely adjust inside there. Let's make it 20 feet and say go ahead and align that in. So it would align it up and move that one curve into the other one. There's still work that needs to be done on this. They have made some really nice enhancements in here, and they have test sets that can go and demonstrate these enhancements, but real world, just putting something together, as we tend to do with testing, there's still work that has to be done on this. Again, it's one of those things on here. One of the by the way, are there any questions? Anything in here? Nothing. Wow.
No questions right now.
Either I am going through this very fast, or I was anticipating a lot more questions on here. One of the things that we did get put in here is that as you're going and migrating data in, first thing you do is you create your structure, you then append the data into that structure, and then you tell it to go and create records associated with those features that you've moved in. And that is a create parcel records. geoprocessing tool. And previously, the only thing you could do is you could tell it what attribute field there actually had on there. Well, now you can actually go and tell it not just the attribute field, but you can actually tell it an arcade expression that you can go and use to go and construct that overall record name on there. So this is a nice tool for people that go in and build and create parcel fabrics as you're going along. Actually, that was one of my early ideas in here. Okay, let's move along here. Traverse. This is one that I like really nice. The first thing you'll notice here is that you can create a traverse to create not just lines. You can now create and input a traverse to create lines and or polygons on here. So I can create a tax polygon by using a traverse. And again, do this and then go and input, north for 150 feet. For 150 feet, and then let's go 90 for 150, 90 for 150. And notice it's actually not inputting lines there. It's actually just creating a sketch as it's going through. And if you're doing a polygon, you then have to go and click finish. But it will go and create a polygon on here. Now for most parcel mappers, that's not a great way to do this. But for a lot of other people that use the traverse to go and create, for example, a zoning restriction or something else, this is a really good way to go and build polygons if they're defined by some sort of meets and bounds description on here. By the way, since this is part of a record, I could actually go and tell it, just go ahead and build this record out, and it will go and put lines and such in here for me. All right. That's a seed, isn't it? Yeah. All right. So I also have Lynn is asking me to go and demo georeferencing and rubber sheeting again. I'll have to see if I have a scan that I can georeference. Let me wait till the end. All right, Lynn, and then I'll pull it up. I may have to go in and move out to a different project to go and do that. Okay. The other thing in the traverse, which is nice, is if I'm going to, for example, tax lines in here, I can go and do this. By default, when you were inputting curves, it was always assuming in previous versions in 2.6 and beyond, it was always assuming that the curve reference was a tangent bearing to here. So in this case, if I make that the reference, it assumed that that was a tangent bearing. So if I hit 0, and then I went and did a radius of 100 feet, and that's 90-degree angle, it would then go and do that. So again, it would assume that that was that, but notice you now have a pull down inside of here that says you can tell whether it's a tangent curve, or excuse me, a tangent bearing or a chord bearing for there. And you can set that as your default, and it's persistent. We've already got an idea to also add radial bearing in here, which I don't know why they didn't put it in there, but they do need to have that. But this allows you to go and set what type of bearing is on here as your persistent default bearing. If you're going to put something in there that's not that default bearing, you still have to use the overrides of TB for tangent bearing and CB for chord bearing and RB for radial bearing. But at least they allow you to go and set the default bearing type for a curve on here. So then I can go in here and 150 feet. And such, and move on. In addition to that, they also, they have fixed this problem that they had initially with 2.5 and 2.6 with the traverse tool, in that it allows you to go and set a persistent type of second parameter that's being input for the curve, whether it's arc lengths or chord lengths or delta angles on here. So for example, if I want to go and do this and then say 0 and make this 200 feet, I then can tell it to, I'm going to be using delta angles from this point forward. They haven't persisted this DMS or whatever, but on here, but it will eventually go and allow you to do that. We're working on it. We're working on it. It's a step forward on here. So they made some really nice enhancements to the traverse tool. A, you can use the traverse tool to go and build polygons on here. And then B, you have the ability to go and set persistent default values for what type of a reference bearing are you going to have on your curves and what type of input are you going to use by default on this. So this is pretty close to what we had here. All right, let's go and get out of here. I guess I could always use bookmarks instead. All right. The next thing that they were working on is a concept of having overlapping lines. For example, all of these lines in here, and I'm going to select these lines. When I do a planarize on here, this is one they were working on. They didn't quite get this done. The hope was that when you go and do planarize, it would automatically go and recalculate the COGO values for there. So when I do planarize here, it would have gone and automatically recalculate the values on here. The problem is, you can see it doesn't. That's 660, 660, 660, 660. So it did not recalc those out. Now, when you go in here and do go and do a modify on here, and you do a split interactively, and I split that, it recalcs it out. But it recalcs it off of the value that's stored in there. In this case, this is 660. This should be something else. So when I do a split, it recalcs it, but it's off of that original 660. So again, it uses any stored value in there, and then it goes and basically proportions according to where you've split them. So right now, my recommendation is, if you've got a bunch of lines and you planarize them, recognize it's not automatically going to generate new COGO for you. Instead, you need to go and update your COGO on those lines by selecting it and doing update COGO. So it will go in and update the correct values for the new split up lines in here. And then everything will work fine from that point forward. So here's one I really like. This is something they put in here in which extend and trim. So let me see if I can figure out how to trigger this again. If I go to extend and trim, extend and trim without a selection, right now it does one at a time. However, if I select these and do extend and trim, what was it? It was doing, what was it doing? Maybe it was this. Now you see, I got it to work earlier. Maybe it's just extend. Huh.
Are you trying to extend all three at once?
Yes.
Try. Okay, you just did what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, I did it without a selection. I can then do this. And it was just, there you go. So I have the three selected. I go here without, with a selection. It would allow me to go and extend them all at one time. To go and then let it intersect that on here. All right. It will allow you to go and do that. It's a nice move forward, but you can see it was a little weird as far as the workflow. You had to do it in a certain sequence for it to work correctly. But it is a step forward in putting this together. Oh, here's another one. If I go in here to tax lines, all right, if I want to go and create a tax line, this one, even though it's little, this is nice what they've done. If I go in here and do a right click and say direction and distance, you'll now note that they changed the order here. The direction and then the distance and then the pitch. Previously, pitch was in the middle here, so you always had to tab past it. Now you can just here and then go 250 and hit enter, and it will go and enter and be done with that. So they have made a nice little change in here. However, also going through here is something that they really didn't talk about that I thought was a nice tool. Is there's a nice tool here called split. I can go and draw a line across an existing line, and when I finish it out, it automatically goes and splits the lines that I crossed. So I can go and draw a line here, draw a line here, draw a line there, and it will go and split all of those lines at the same time that I drew them. Nice enhancement. I want to see them move further on this than what they've got on here. The other thing, there's this radial line that's been in there a while. I just never really used that much. Those are all of the things I could find that were useful for parcel mapping on here. So are there any other questions on here before I go try to dig up something with georeferencing something? Any other questions? Did we go over this enough?
None in the chat.
Hey Frank, this is Ryan.
Yes, sir.
So as you know, I've been working on building out our control point database, trying to figure out some things. And one of the things that I've come across that's been kind of interesting is I've been trying to bring XY in from a table.
Yeah.
And currently I'm not at 2.7, I'm at 2.6 point whatever.
6.3.
CSV table is not supported in that import tool, even though it's supposed to be supported in Pro. So you can add the table into your map and display it that way. But if you actually try doing it through the tool to display XY for coordinates, for like control points, it's not you can't select it when you do it through the tool.
Interesting.
I've been playing with that a lot this last week.
Does it, I mean, so what format does it support? Does it support just a regular text file, or does it have to be some sort of geodatabase list or something, a table?
Well, that's where it's interesting is even in a geodatabase, the same exact, I brought it in as just a geobase table. Ew, I can't talk now. It won't find it either. So I think it might be a bug that I've come across at 2.6. So I wonder if it's at 2.7. If it's been fixed. So, but it's just something I've been some frustrations I've had this last week trying to get the control point database stuff figured out for when we move to Pro Fabric.
Interesting. I'm trying to think. You know, if you want, why don't you email me a file real fast, and we can look and see if I can pull that thing in. All right.
I actually don't have one on my computer here at home. I was working on in the office.
Okay. Let me see. I think I had something in here. New control points. So let me go and export this out to, what could I export this out to? I don't know whether I have any shape files. Let's add this here to my current map. Let's open up the attribute table. And let's go and export this out as, let's just do it to my computer desktop. Output location, good, I love it. Yeah. Here's my location. Test.csv. All right. So now I should have on my desktop here. No, I'll bet you it's my other
You put it in
desktop.
one of the folders in there, Frank.
Thank you.
I don't know which one it was.
Test.csv.
Yeah. All
right, so it's in, thank you. So if I go in here, and how are you doing that? How are you importing that in?
So if you just XY, I can't remember what the heck it was completely called.
Is it insert?
Yeah, you can just search it in geoprocessing as a tool. XY table 2 point.
And in here, CSV.
So there you can see it now, whereas in 2.6 I could not see it.
And it did have a CSV suffix on it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, let's just run this just to make sure.
Yep, and when you actually looked at it there, it actually pulled it up as a text file when you entered the input table. It was actually shown as a text file, not a CSV.
And I'm assuming it may have only had 1 point in there. No, it did have a bunch of points in there. Okay.
Well, at least it's showing up now at 2.7. So
yeah.
But yeah, like I said, at 2.6 it was not that you couldn't select the CSV there.
Yep. Well, good. Good. I'm glad that we could help you on that one.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. So I know that Lynn had asked me about georeferencing an image. Let me go and see if I can find an image somewhere. Chris, do you remember where I might have an image? Oh, I've got one here. Training 2. Here. Let me go and copy this, bring it over to my desktop. So I don't have anything else on it. All right. So what Lynn has asked me is that I go and demonstrate how to go and georeference an image in here. Now, this image doesn't go here. This image is from Texas. This is up in, this data is from Wisconsin. So it doesn't fit exactly, but I'm going to go through the steps just in figuring out how do I bring something in and do that. So if I go again to my map and say add data, I can add data from a specific area. I can go into here and find, oh, there's data. I don't want to do that. Let's go to folders. Let's go in here, and that's where I did put it, isn't it? There it is there. It is a JPEG. That shouldn't make any difference. All right.
Frank, you should be able to just drop that in right from the Explorer window.
Let's do that. From here, just go in here and drop this in. All right. By the way, this is an interesting thing that's happened. So they have now recognized that there are tools that go and restrict what's happening. So when you saw me drop an image in here, it automatically opened up a notification window that said, there is no coordinate value on there. And it's the same way with, for example, when I'm doing update COCO or any other selection that goes and restrict what gets selected, a notification window pops up. It's a really nice improvement. First time you see it, it's like, what is that? Is it an error? It's not really an error. It's just a notification that thing was in there. So let me go and take this. I'm going to move it all the way to the top just so we can see it. So one of the things that's happening, let's get rid of a couple of the things here. All right. So when I go and select on an image file, I then could go to Imagery tab, and you'll see on there a whole bunch of things in here. It's the georeferencing that will bring up some new functionality in here, including things like I can say, fit that image to my current display. All right, fit that image to my current display. I can also go in here and go to my appearance and say, maybe make this a little bit transparent so I can see through here as I'm going, and do that. So I can pick up control points. Let me go back to my georeferencing tab. Again, once I click georeferencing on my imagery tab, it automatically creates its own tab with its own functions in here. So I can do everything from flipping it to rotating it and all sorts of things that I normally would do. In this case, I'm going to start adding control points. Now a control point says take this pixel on my image and move it over here. And then you can see as I'm doing that, it will automatically go and attempt to automatically display because I have auto apply turned on at the moment. Let's go down here and say that I'm going to add another control point, that this point on my image actually corresponds to this point here. And you'll see it go and rotate and scale that scan as I'm going through here. All right, it will rotate and scale it for me. Now, there's a certain art/science to this. You want to make sure that when you are building and inputting these control points, that you're not taking a small area and saying, put a control point there and then put a control point there. You want to try to get these control points initially fairly spaced out. The way I describe it is that it's like tightening up the lug nuts on a tire when you're tightening it up. You want to go one corner to the other corner to the other corner to the other corner. You want to try and get things like that. So I could go in here and say, well, maybe this point goes here. And as I do it, it will begin building a better and better solution to where all of this should be input. Now, as I go in and start putting some other ones in, maybe this point goes here, it will start warping things. And you can see it's telling me what warping it's doing in here. It's got 4 control points. There are some errors on here. If I open up my control point table, it tells me what the source coordinate value is, what the source X and Y values are, and what the map X and Y values are, and the residual on here. The residual in X, the residual in Y, the total residual. These will tell me how well does this scan fit in to where I'm trying to go and put it. And it turns out that it wasn't bad until I actually got to this one. So let me go and select this one and delete that. And the scan actually, again, I only have 3 points, so it's going to be 0. But the scan will get better as we go through here. So it's a combination of A, bringing it into your display, and then B, setting up those control points so that you can identify points in your data that these individual pixels on the scan are going to go and correspond to. Once you get that in place, and once you're comfortable with this, and again, please do more than 3. 3 is really not sufficient. You want to make sure that it is in there in the right place. Once you've done that, you can go and click Save. And what it actually does is let's go in here, and let's go here, and it's here. So what it actually does is it took this JPEG and it created a world file, a JP, in this case JPW, JPWX. It's a world file. That world file tells it an XY coordinate value and a rotation and scaling value for them. And that's what this entire georeferencing process does. It calculates where it's supposed to go in the world, how much it's supposed to be rotated, and how much is scaled out. That's what the world file does. It creates that so that now I can actually, now that I've saved this, I can actually go and remove this image. Let's go and remove this image, Frank. Let's slow this down a little bit, Frank, so you don't crash ArcGIS Pro. All right, move that image. Now I can go back here and I can take that image in again. And when I go and drop that image down, it will go and automatically place it according to that world file. So it will go and automatically place it and get it back to that same point as I put it in place there. All right, Lynn, that's sort of your 10-minute georeferencing on here. You want to make sure it's an image file. You cannot do a PDF file, but you can do a TIFF, a JPEG. You can do a PNG file. You can do any sort of an image file. All right. Pull it into ArcGIS Pro, select it, click on imagery, and then say georeference this. It will bring up its own toolbar for you and begin by moving it into the display, and then begin adding control points on there. Those control points will tell you how far off, how much warping has to go on. Once you're happy with it, hit save, and it will save that world file for you. And that world file then will persist. Every time you load that up, it says, do you have a world file? If it does, it goes and puts that image according to that world file. All right. Hopefully that helped. That was a real short lesson, but hopefully that helped. Any other questions on anything in here? Anything else you want me to explore while I've got this thing open on here? Personally, and I know the rest of my team hasn't been using it yet, but I've been using 2.7 for a while. I like it. There's some nice incremental changes that have occurred on there. I wish they would have gone all the way. And to be honest, I wish that the beta period was a little bit longer, because there were still some things that aren't all the way done. But overall, I think it's a really good, release on here. One thing I do want to go and make sure that I warn anybody that's got an enterprise implementation of this, 2.7 only works with enterprise server software 10.9, which I understand isn't out for full release yet. The business partners have received a copy of it, and it should be out here within a week or so, 10.9. So please don't rush out if you've got an enterprise implementation on it. But overall, I like it. I think it's good. It's got some good things in here. And as we experiment more and as we find more in here, we're going to keep sharing with you in these workshops as we find them. So if there's no other comments, if there's no other suggestions, no other questions, I'm going to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a happy holiday. We'll see you again in January. We will be working most of this holiday, but I hope we get a chance to see you and talk to you again. I hope you've enjoyed the workshops. This has been a strange year for us and for everybody. And the workshops are a way for us to give back to you and to find a way to go and communicate with you, because we're not visiting anywhere right now, and I don't think we're going to for a while. So please, everybody, have a Merry Christmas and good holiday. Stay safe. We're hearing more and more people that have had the virus, and some of them doing well, some of them not so well. So please stay safe. And any questions or anything, just reach out to us. We're here. So let's stop this recording and let's move and transition into what we call office hours. Turn on everybody's mic, and we just sort of start talking on here. So again, see you next year. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277, and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.